Boxing Report, episode 267. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing, Daniel from the Inscriber. He's going to join us in a bit. Um, what's going on, lady and gents?
Hey, we might have a
Hello.
few things to talk about tonight. Just a
Indeed,
few.
indeed. Indeed, yeah. Not much happened this weekend, but still a lot going on outside the ring. For those who are new, Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, as well as a blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That is the link. You check the top right portion of the blog page. You will find the links to where to find us all over social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and whatnot. Also, links to where to find us on all platforms that carry RSS feeds. Uh, Links to the donate button. Let donation be the best nation. We got a PayPal, Cash Me donation link on the blog page. I don't care if you have some spare change on you. I don't care if it's $1, $5, $2, $10, or if you want to submit more, please do. Nothing is free, including the production of this podcast. So whatever little coin you can send, you have on hand, send it our way. Also, link to my fitness page. Let's Build Together Fitness Challenge, starting in October. Didn't do one this month. Took vacation, took some time off, but we're getting back into the swing of things in October. Got a link to my Beachbody online coach fitness page. So yeah, if you're interested, fun program, fun fitness challenges, all of the programs on Beachbody.com, on Beachbody on Demand, excuse me. Hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Facebook, and we can discuss some things. Let's get things going. Didn't preview any fights this weekend, but uh, unexpected result that took place anyway, as Peter Quillin, former middleweight champion, on the comeback trail at super middleweight, fought a thought to be well past his prime, faded Alfredo Angulo, and sometimes you get the biggest surprises, and we got that this weekend as Angulo scored the upset, defeated Quillin by decision. I'll go to you, Gail. Quillin in the ring, you saw was a significantly bigger and stronger looking guy. But as the fight went along, I was shocked at how Angulo turned out to be the sturdier fighter. He seemed to be the harder puncher in there. Uh, Quillin, he landed his shots, but he never moved Angulo. Yet when Angulo landed his shots, he seemed to move Quillin. Um, Low key, one of the bigger upsets of the sport. Boxing Twitter was talking about it all night long. Afterwards, Quillin seemed to suggest that he's going to ponder retirement, while Angulo's he's talking about being reborn. Try to unwrap what you saw over the weekend. Upset from one Mr. Angulo.
You know, the old dog did have some new tricks in him. He has been training with Abel Sanchez up at the summit. Um, Very interesting pairing. Frankly, a little surprised Abel took him on, but he did. And it's working. Angulo is an old war horse, war dog. That guy has been in some amazing wars, as Jacob can tell you firsthand. He's seen plenty of them too. Um, there's not a lot of finesse to Angulo at all. Nothing fancy. He is, if you looked up pressure fighter in the dictionary, you'd see his picture in there. And it was fascinating to watch how he approached this fight. You know, in the first 3 or 4 rounds, honestly, he didn't throw a lot. He didn't. And PBC was keeping the punch stats live. So you could tell Bullen was much busier, but he was going backwards the entire fight. And Gulo just kept coming at him. just kept coming at him. I mean, it was almost forehead first, not headbutting, but just at him. And the psychological pressure as well as the physical pressure got to Quillin. And once he was psychologically broken down by it and started feeling some punches, you could see him getting demoralized. And here comes Angulo. He was smart enough to conserve his energy early on, use this pressure tactic. And once he had Quillin where he wanted him in position to really feel being hit and be a little worn out, he did a great job going to the body. He buzzed Quillin more than once. There is a lot to be said for how tough Quillin is. He shouldn't ever have survived all 12 rounds, but he's a pro. He's well trained. He's well conditioned, but he's just lost something. And I'm not sure he's lost that much physically. Every fight begins and ends in the mind, and his mind isn't there. His mind isn't in it. He could have quit at any point. He could have taken a knee half dozen times without shame. He didn't do that. I'll give him that. So we ended up with, heck of a little barn burner fight. Was it elegant? No. Was there a lot of skill on display? Tactically, yeah, but skills, no. But sometimes you just want a meat and potatoes fight like this. And that's what we got. And it was damned entertaining. And there was nothing competing with it unless you were watching, some crazy Washington State UCLA football game. But so a lot of people were on board for it. And it was surprisingly fun to watch.
I'll go to you, Jacob. Gail mentioned how you've seen Angulo fight on numerous occasions. Your level of surprise at what you saw from Angulo and how he performed against Quillin.
Yeah, I have a little bit different perspective. I do think that Gail is right in the regards to Quillin's. Ever since he lost to Jacobs in devastating fashion, first round stoppage, and then kind of went away, and then slowly has worked his way back. I was never a big Quillin fan. I didn't think that he was that great of a fighter. And he just mentally, he just doesn't seem like he's dedicated to the sport. So I'm not sure I would call this like a huge upset in the sense that I think Quillin's team had the wrong game plan. I think, Angulo, in my opinion, I don't think Angulo should be fighting anymore either. And just because Angulo won this fight or was awarded the decision, split decision, doesn't, against an opponent that's maybe not, all there and 100% committed and that has maybe some, that should retire himself. When you get that kind of win, I don't know that that's, to me, an endorsement to keep on going. Angulo's, he's been in a lot of wars and, he's like his nickname, the dog, he's going to go and give it his all and he's going to take a, punishment and try to land his shots. But he's incredibly slow. He did miss a lot of punches that Quillin was able to get away from, because his style is just come forward in a straight line and just throw punches and hopefully he hurts his guy. But again, Quillin, I just don't think had the right game plan. He was backing up all night. He uses jab a lot, but he didn't use his jab to set up any of his other like follow-up punches. It was just a lot of like jabbing and then letting himself get caught against the ropes or in the corner, and then that's when Angulo would unload. But interesting enough, I think Gail mentioned it. The punch stats he threw and landed. I think double of what Angulo did. and his punch percentage was, I think 42%, something like that, to Angulo's 24%. So, so maybe that's why it was a split decision. But again, I think if Angulo steps up the competition and fights somebody that has a little bit more status, or that's in the game a little bit mentally, I think he's going to lose very badly, like he has in recent times. He if Quillin had timed and countered off Angulo more, he would have probably knocked him out. Because he's that slow, and you can kind of see the punches coming from a mile away. But again, we're talking about a very faded, in my opinion, Quillin, more so the mental, like Gail said, than anything.
If Quillin is going to fight like this, no disrespect to Angulo, but if Quillin is going to perform in this way, he needs to call it a day, because no offense to Angulo, I know he acts as he feels as if he's reborn, but if they dare put him in there with a top 10 middleweight, super middleweight, he's in big time trouble.
Imagine like a Smith, a Callum Smith. If he was in there with him,
God.
he would get absolutely destroyed.
David Benavidez.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Jacob, I actually don't disagree with you. I really feel very much like you do. I don't think this was any, brilliant performance or meltdown completely by Quillin. I really would. I think Quillin should, if he's going to have more performances like that, he should think about retiring. Angulo, he cannot take many more fights like that, as virtually every fight in his career has been some version of that. He maybe he cashes out as a gatekeeper to somebody, but he should not take on one of the top guys. Yeah, he'd be cannon fodder. It would be ugly. I mean, if he's smart, he should go out now, because he can go out with some pride. But it's the draw of the paycheck. I get it, but those fights are just they're entertaining, and afterward you think, ugh,
It's more dangerous than anything, though. It's more dangerous than anything, because when a fighter that probably should have retired wins a fight against a name opponent, it gives them the confidence, and it gives them the, maybe I haven't lost it. So it gives them the kind of I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it gives them the illusion that they aren't faded. But so that leads to, when they get a step up fight, then they get really hurt, and again,
right.
to your point,
absolutely,
I don't know what his money situation is, but if he's doesn't have a bunch of, if he didn't do good investments and wasn't careful with his money, and he's one of those guys that doesn't know how to do anything else, doesn't have any other skills outside of boxing, that's where they can continue to fight. And then even when they get hurt, they just continue to go to these shows and, get deeper on the cards, get less money, and, more brain damage. And I think they mentioned that the reason that he went to Sanchez, the trainer, was his wife, I believe, told him, had pleaded with him that he needed to change the scenery, and actually went to Abel and not begged, but kind of pleaded with him to take on Angulo. I think that was the story.
Yeah, that is the story. She was the deal maker, essentially. Angulo's history is interesting. He is a Mexican citizen living in California, but he's had immigration issues. I mean, he was locked up in El Centro on immigration problems and lost, I can't recall the fight, but there was a period where he was out of commission because he couldn't get the INS to release him. And this was before we had the border situation we have now. In that part of California, the border used to be, pretty darn fluid, frankly. His roster and his career of, among his 33 fights, we forget he's got some pretty damn big names on his resume. I mean, he has Canelo on his resume. He has Erislandy Lara on his resume. He's got Sergio Mora on his resume. It always makes me laugh for some reason. Now, what I heard mentioned, and Michael, I'm going to wait for your reaction to this one. Somebody said, well, hey, why don't we have him do a rematch with James Kirkland?
No.
What the hell are you thinking? No.
He's got Rosado on his resume too.
No, he does have, in that.
He stopped him in 2 rounds.
Yes, he did. That was, in fact, that was a great fight, actually. But you know what? That was, believe it or not, that was 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Yeah, that I wouldn't be surprised to see that come up either. Holy moly. I mean, we're going to get Angulo again. I would imagine his money situation is okay. He's probably not destitute, but he lives out in the desert, when he's not training. He's on the other side of the hills there in Coachella. I don't know if he intends to stay in the US. He intends to go back to Baja. Who knows? I hope he isn't forced to make a living this way, that he's, if he does it because he wants to. But this is the point of a career where you can really do serious damage to yourself. And I hope his wife is looking out for him. Sometimes that's the difference maker. So I'll cross my fingers, but please.
Unfortunately, though, because I think she's too close to the situation, and I mean, I don't know their family situation, but if you're dependent on this person, I don't think that they should be the ones even involved in the decision making.
Sometimes, yeah. I hope he's hung on to some of his money. I mean, he has fought some fights with decent purses, so I'll cross my fingers that somebody not dependent on him making a living assesses what's going on with him. You watch a fight like that and it's kind of a guilty pleasure. You do enjoy it, but at least at this point of my, boxing experience, worry about guys after a fight like that. They have a long life to live after they quit, and it can be very ugly if they engage in a lot of those kind of fights for too long.
First of all, I want to give a shout out to Olaf the Mighty, who joined us in the live YouTube chat. He says he can't believe Quillin lost. He was a 30-1 favorite. Says it's the year of the upsets. I see Daniel from the Inscriber has joined us. Unmute your mic, Daniel. Quick word on Angulo's upset of Peter Quillin over the weekend.
I wasn't able to see it, but when I saw it down my Twitter feed, I'm just shocked. I'm just considering just the slog that Angulo's career has been over the past few years. And you have to consider that Quillin, that Daniel Jacobs knockout is still with him in a way. But you would figure that Quillin would probably have more enough to put on someone like Angulo, but apparently that's not the case, which actually raises the question more about Quillin's career. Now, I jumped in right in the middle of this. Gail was mentioning family issues and money when it comes to Angulo. That's definitely going to play a factor into what he's going to come next for him, because obviously, as Jacob has always mentioned, that we don't really believe fighters when they say they're retired or when they're going to retire, when they're going to step away. But at the same time, Angulo's in the way like James Kirkland. Like I liked James Kirkland like 5 or 6 years ago, before he took on the fights and the beatings that he's been taking. Angulo's in the same way. Like everybody has that horror story. Everybody knows the story when he was stuck in immigration court and he was detained under custody. But just picturing from what I've heard of the fight, I just hope he does step away. Like there's not enough situation where you got to put yourself in a spot where people like Juanma or Margarito put themselves in, where not only do they need it for love, but they also need it for finances. It's just going to get, it's just, hopefully this is the last one. If he goes out like this, he goes out on the win, which is something that's always a little bit heartwarming. But at the same time, you never know with these guys.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Indeed. Let's move on to some news here. There's some other fights, but Jojo Diaz, he won over the weekend, 12-round decision in Mexico. Fight was a bit of a boring fight to me, so don't want to mention much about that. Probably moving on to fight Tevin Farmer, early 2020. Let's get on to some news here, and one Gary Russell Jr. He has been out here with a whole lot to say. Comments about Floyd, but in particular comments about one Leo Santa Cruz. And I'll go to you, Daniel. As much as boxing Twitter was talking about the Angulo fight with Quillin. And I think that's both of Three Kings has joined us. Gary Russell, like I said, he had a lot to say. It's not just what he said, but also what he did. The way that he went about trying to call out a fight against one Leo Santa Cruz. Using his father as a prop to call him out. People thought that was below the belt, Daniel. For me, I don't know what was worse, that tactic from Russell or the response to what Russell did from Santa Cruz, basically saying, well, yeah, he did it. I'll fight who I want to fight. I'm not bothered by it. He's just seeking a big fight. I'm like, my thing is, Daniel, I'm like, yeah, okay, you can try to take the high road, but when dude uses your own dad as a prop, basically low-key threatening his dad, as a tactic to get a fight with you, I'm like, Leo, you should be just on GP. You should be calling for a fight with Gary Russell. You should be like, forget everything else on site. Get him in the ring with me ASAP. Your reaction to what Russell said and did, your reaction to Leo Santa Cruz's response, which to me was a bit tepid, if not outright soft.
Well, when you look at what Gary Russell's been doing in the past few years, we have to remember that he fights only once a year for some reason. But every single time it hasn't been exactly against exemplary competition. And the questions always come up. Are you going to unify? And obviously the name that always comes up, because it's PBC, it's Leo Santa Cruz. So I'm not surprised that he went after like that. What probably surprises me is the level of venom that came out of him. Because to me, it's more of a tactic that people know your reputation, but now people know what they perceive you. But so you had to act extreme, like a really extreme tough guy, in order to be somewhat recognized or somewhat taken seriously. Now, Leo Santa Cruz's reaction, I am not surprised by it in the least, in this sense, because of his demeanor. Like, granted, yeah, it would not have been my demeanor. I'm sorry. If somebody brings out my dad when it comes into certain situations, especially considering the fact that that man is dead, Yeah, I would not be a happy guy. I would not be a happy guy right now. But Leo Santa Cruz is a little bit more mellow. And because Leo Santa Cruz is a little bit more mellow, I expected this type of response. What I didn't like from the response of Santa Cruz, though, was I'll fight whoever, but I'm not the one who decides the fights. And unfortunately, that has been Leo Santa Cruz's MO. He's been one of those Heyman guys that has pretty much let Heyman take complete control of the career. Never tried to make it a point to make fights on himself or for himself. He just fights the guy that Al puts in front of him. Sometimes it comes out good. Some, like the Frampton series, sometimes it may come out bad. As far as money and as far as what you're willing to do, and I get why some people, like I said, it rubs me the wrong way with the father, but I'm not surprised by Leo Santa Cruz's response, but it does speak a little bit of the endemic and a lot of when it comes to the featherweight division, because to PBC guys. It's obvious that neither one of that they both want to fight each other, but it's also obvious at the same time that they're not really forcing their promoter, Al Heyman. Let's call him what he is. He's their promoter. He's never calling out their hands saying just make the fight. They'd rather just go around it, talking about it, and then meanwhile another year happens and nothing gets done.
Everybody else into the discussion, Jacob, Gail, and Bo. I'm gonna go to you first, Bo.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I get what Russell did. I'm not a fan of what he did. I'm still feeling some kind of way of Santa Cruz and how he reacted to it. Being the next fighter, being someone who writes and covers the sport, being someone who's at events, who's at the fights, who's around fighters, your reaction to what both Russell did and the way that Santa Cruz reacted to that.
Okay, let me address one thing. To put this on how Heyman is wrong, because at the end of the day, when I interviewed Jelena Mazzoni, she said one thing that clicked with me big time. She said, if a fighter wants a fight, as that promoter, you have to give him that fight. When Canelo Alvarez was ran up on by Erislandy Lara, Oscar didn't want that fight, Canelo forced his hand. Leo Santa Cruz can force his hand. You're the fighter, okay? You can tell him what you want. So I'm not gonna put this on Heyman, because at the end of the day, you're the fighter. If you really want that fight, you say, hey man, damn this dude. Damn what you telling me. I'm gonna make this fight myself.
Oh, no, I never said that it's on Heyman.
No. I'm not talking about you, Daniel.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I'm speaking in general. Anybody that wants to say it's Heyman, no, because you're the fighter. But here's the problem with that is that at the end of the day, what is the one thing, the one code that every fighter says? Say what you want about me, but leave my family out of it. Right? Russell involved his father. It was a street move. It was a G move. It was pretty much to let him know, hey, man, I'm really serious. I will roll up on you or somebody that you know. Right? Leo Santa Cruz taking the road he took, it was, I don't know if I can say it was more or less taking the high road, as it was just a matter of Leo Santa Cruz just being like, man, you know what? It doesn't matter. I don't care, because remember, he did the same thing when it came to Rigan Diaz. Rigo was like, all right, man, he said, yeah, I'll fight him for $3 million. Now, nobody ever made that in that division. He knows that, but he said it. So that's kind of, I'm not surprised about what Leo Santa Cruz reaction was. What I am shocked about is just the fact that there should be more of a public outcry that, because if from a public standpoint, from a media standpoint, if everybody was on Leo Santa Cruz's neck, he'd have no choice but to make that fight. So because there's no outcry, he just, and everybody's like, man, you know, he kind of got at you. He's just kind of going to laugh this off. But for me, what Gary Russell did, like I've said this, you want to put pressure on the guy, you got to fight. Yeah, okay, yeah, I give you this. You rode up on his father, and it was hard. You rode up on his dad, and it was hard. But at the end of the day, if Gary Russell was more busy, he could roll up on his father, and people probably would push for that fight because they'd be like, "Yo, Gary's serious, man. He's been fighting more, and he rolled up on dude, right?" So, I just I don't think Leo wants this fight, like, because Gary Russell said something. He said, "Man, I used to beat this dude in the amateurs. He don't want to fight me." And I think when he rolled up on his father and his response, I think that kind of gives a little credence to what Gary Russell said, because at the end of the day, somebody involves your family. And like I said, this is what you hear fighters say all the time. Man, say what you want about me, but don't involve my family. So, you know, and you can make the case, well, Leo's father is in the limelight, but Leo's father's not the fighter, regardless. He's not the fighter. So, you know, at the end of the day, if these two guys don't fight, it feels like another Tank Davis and Tevin Farmer all over again. If these two guys don't fight, and what's gonna piss me off is somebody talking about some going to 130. Well, so was Gary talking about going to 130. So what? We gonna play this again? So if these two dudes don't wind up fighting, I'd rather just see their ass out of boxing, period, altogether, man.
Now I go to you, Jacob and Gail. Your reaction to all of this?
I think Bo hit on a lot of the good, topics or points. My whole thing with Gary Russell is that, I don't like what he did, and I don't like, bringing the dad into it and all that stuff. But I just find it interesting that Gary Russell is talking trash, but the guy only fights once a year. So, to me, you can't really talk a lot of trash if you're not going to be active, because if you're just waiting for that one fight, that might not ever happen. If you fight and you win, then you kind of force the other fighters to have to face you, or it makes it look like they're scared. But I mean, he's publicly said that, he doesn't care if he only fights once a year. So, I don't think that Santa Cruz is afraid of him. You know, be it as whatever the amateurs. I mean, amateurs is different than the professionals. There's been many cases where people lose in the amateurs, and then they beat the guy when they fight him. So I mean, it's to me totally different things. But in a way, though, those Leo Santa Cruz, from when he fought Mares the first time, and then he fought Frampton twice, and then his whole career kind of took he was kind of like on the uprise, and it stalled because he wasn't fighting the big names or people that we wanted to see him fight. And he also, his activity level as far as fights per year was going down. So I think maybe Leo's, in a way, kind of being a little bit smarter about it, in the sense of, we talk about boxers hanging on too long, not being good with their money and all that stuff. So he's trying to get paid as much as he can. He's not taking a bunch of damage because he's not being in a lot of tough fights, after that period. So, in a way, he's kind of preserving himself more. I would love to see this fight go down, but I have a feeling that it's Leo Santa Cruz is more in line to fight somebody else, maybe another easy payday, because Al, for some reason, has his favorites, and Leo Santa Cruz is one of them. And Al's favorites get paid, for basically junk fights, against people that shouldn't be getting that opportunity. So, I mean, if from his standpoint, if he's going to keep on getting paid, $1 million or whatever for a junk fight, then, what's to stop him from continuing to do that?
Pay, yes, but at what expense, Gail? He's getting money, good money, really good money fighting these guys. I think he's getting $1 million a fight nowadays. He can get the same thing with Gary Russell. There are fights out here. Here's my thing. What has he done, really, Gail, since the second Frampton fight? Who has he really fought? Um, I understand the criticism of Russell. We all know he fights once a year. We've been on him about that for years. But as problematic as some may find what he did, at least he's calling for a big fight, a unification bout against someone in his division. My thing is, be it against Russell or anyone else, why are we not seeing that from Santa Cruz? And when you get his when you add on to that the reaction to what Russell did, kind of piggybacking on what Bo said, what Mazzoni told him about ultimately is up to the fighters. I'm like, okay, you're getting paid, yes, but you also want to have legacy. You also, if you a fighter with any pride, want to fight the best of the best. And if this dude does this, and you respond in the way you responded, I'm raising some side eye towards you. Be mad at Russell all you want, but I'm looking at Santa Cruz. I'm like, come on, man, you got to do better than this. This is not enough. I don't care how reserved or his personality is. When you get personal like that, I expect a stronger clapback.
You know, if you are the kind of personality that Leo Santa Cruz is, and very protective of his father, he's not going to escalate. He's not going to escalate. I get it that that's very hard for some people to understand. But in this case, I think he simply does not want to engage with Russell at all. No matter what, he's letting Russell's actions speak for themselves, and they were on video there for everybody to see. So Santa Cruz doesn't really need to say a whole lot. Everyone just needs to understand the context. You know, he approached Leo's father. Leo's father does not speak English, never has. Leo's father has battled cancer on and off for quite a few years. He's fought his way back. You know, sometimes he's looked pretty good. He's managed to be in his son's corner. Right now, he's in a bad way and he's hurting. And, you know, Russell should not have approached him, bottom line. He's trolling him. He has apologized, as far as I understand, after the fact. I think there's no percentage in it for Santa Cruz to engage with him. Beyond that, let's talk about the fight situation. You know, Russell hasn't exactly distinguished himself being so inactive. He's an acquired taste at this point. Hardcore insider boxing heads, examples shown here among the panel, you know, we respect his skills and talent. We like to see him. We like to watch him. He isn't a guy that puts a lot of butts in the seats. And at this point, Santa Cruz probably is more interested, and Al Heyman probably more interested, butts in the seats. And Santa Cruz can do that without risking himself against Russell. I get it. Everybody's always wants best of the best. But we were just talking about fighters like Alfredo Angulo, who stay in too long, who go in too hard when they shouldn't. You know, Santa Cruz is in his 30s, young 30s. He's 31, I think. Gary Russell is 31. You know, kind of interesting that they are virtually the same age. In fight years, Santa Cruz has been far busier, far more visible. He would be the A side, truthfully. So he gets to call the shots. What Gary Russell can do, if he really, really wants this fight, yes, he needs to sit down and have a hard talk with his promoter and figure out what's realistic, what would need to happen. You know, what would the terms need to be? Is this acceptable to you? Have a business internal business discussion. Now, something else he could do, vacate his title and get ranked by the WBA. Could happen. I'm not suggesting it. Or, make it worthwhile for Santa Cruz to go after him by making himself more attractive. Take on some other fighters and beat him. Not only at 126, give it a shot at 130. Give it a shot at 135. I mean, maybe by tackling some other dangerous opponents, you lure Santa Cruz in because suddenly he's got belts. He's got more of a fan base. Russell Jr. has not done a great job for himself cultivating a fan base. He doesn't seem to care about it. He does his thing in the ring. He does a good job. He gets paid and he gets out. But the clock's ticking on him. He needs to take the bull by the horns, and it isn't by, throwing himself against the wall. It's not working. The old definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That's where we are now with Russell. So, his actions were inexcusable. He's apologized. I think the best thing is for everyone to move on and for him to really strategically figure out what puts him in position. And maybe he never gets Santa Cruz. Fine. Move up and, call out Tevin Farmer, Devin Haney, call out Miguel Burchell, call out one of those guys. That would get a lot of people's attention if he did something like that in a more positive way.
I'm still holding out. I'm still holding out on this fight that this fight will happen because to me for me I should say, it's the most attractive fight at featherweight, and the natural bout that could happen at featherweight, given both are presently aligned with the same promotion. And I just feel that ultimately at the end of the day, what's really stopping these two from getting in the ring? To me, it just seems that both parties involved, Russell and Santa Cruz, if all parties involved really want the fight to happen, make it happen. The back and forth, the talking, all this, make it happen. Because it's a damn good fight. It's a damn good fight at the end of the day. And I don't understand why it's not being made. It should be made. Point blank period. It should be made. Move on to some other news. At the end of the last episode, towards the end of the last episode last week, we talked about, we mentioned Ryan Garcia re-upping with Golden Boy. Gail, as a matter of fact, you were doing the show on the way back from the announcement of Kovalev and Canelo moving up from middleweight to light heavyweight to try to win the light heavyweight title from the Crusher. I'm going to you with this because you was at the event. Behind the scenes, I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Behind the scenes, there was some very interesting comments from Canelo about one Golden Boy. Look, Canelo is the cash cow of the sport right now. He made the Forbes list of one of the highest paid athletes in all of sports. But, and you can report on this, Gail, some comments about Canelo towards Golden Boy suggest that all may not be peaches and cream between the two right now. Get into what was said by Canelo about one Oscar De La Hoya.
Well, let me set the scene quickly. This was the formal media news conference gathering in Los Angeles at Union Station, kind of an interesting location, to formally announce the Canelo versus Kovalev fight. It wasn't a big secret at that point. And there was a limited group of about a dozen members of the boxing media invited for private interviews in a group with the main combatants, both Alvarez and Kovalev. but we also talked with some of the DAZN executives, and we also talked with, as it turned out, Oscar. So we were in small little rooms behind the stage, hidden off, and shuttled between these little rooms. And it was just a very odd setup and situation. I've never seen anything like that. Instead of bringing people in and out of these rooms, we were moving back and forth. It was like being in the janitor's closet, frankly. So we're sitting there, moving into this room. We're told that Canelo's going to come in. Instead, here comes Oscar. Okay, so we have a chat with Oscar. What's going on, Oscar? We don't get a lot of FaceTime with Oscar these days. So he was there. He talked about, putting this together. And of course, the Ryan Garcia mess from the previous weekend came up. He announced that he, Golden Boy and Garcia had come to terms. We knew that Ryan had been at the Golden Boy offices almost all day Monday, 10 hours. Almost, I don't think anyone was there with him but his manager. And announced they'd come to terms. Everything was good. Hey, these things happen. It was a misunderstanding. He's, blowing it over. And as we're talking to Oscar, I realized Garcia has walked into the room behind him, which I don't think a lot of people noticed. And I said, well, Oscar, Ryan has walked in behind you. Why don't we bring him forward? They did. They acted like everything was fine. Hey, sometimes brothers fight, families fight. It's all good. We love each other. They, had the little bromance in front of the cameras, and then they took off. Or actually, Garcia took off. Oscar's still in the room. Finally, here comes Canelo with Golden Boy's senior-most communications manager, Ramiro Gonzalez. Ramiro's wife is Canelo's personal assistant, has been for some time. She also is now starting to act as his interpreter. But what was interesting to me is that Canelo spoke quite a bit of English with this small group. And Canelo's English is much better than most people realize. First of all, he completely understands what you're telling him in English. He isn't always, he's a lot like Golovkin in this way. They both understand English perfectly well. They don't always feel completely equipped to answer with the kind of finesse they want in a second language. So they often respond in their first language so that they're sure they get their wording right. They want to be very careful about it. Not that they couldn't answer. They choose another way to answer. So here they all are. They walk in. Oscar leaves and very visibly leaves. And to say that the temperature of that room dropped 30 degrees, even on a hot day in Los Angeles, is an understatement. Frosty, very frosty. Canelo sits down. Canelo has always been a very controlled personality. You very rarely see, he sort of likes Leo Santa Cruz in that way. You rarely see a rise out of him, except in the ring for effect or when he feels that it's necessary to make a point. He's very careful about what he says. He was asked point blank several times, how is your relationship with Oscar? And he had a one-word answer, and he didn't wait for it to be translated. How's your relationship with Oscar? Trabajo, work. It's a business relationship. That's all he said. Work. It's work. Are you friends with Oscar? Asked one of the reporters. And he hesitated. And he knew what he was being asked. He wasn't waiting for the translation. He looked right at him. And then he looked away without eye contact to any of us. And he said, kind of shrugged his shoulders, and he said, yes. In English, yes. That was the most lukewarm, yes, we're friends, I've ever heard in my life. He made his point that he's not on the greatest of terms with Oscar. He is still very angry at Golden Boy and therefore Oscar over this issue with his DAZN contract and whether or not he is obligated to a third fight with Golovkin. He also made it very clear in that interview, which wasn't really news. He said this before. He doesn't want a third fight. He doesn't feel he needs a third fight. He said it's of no interest to him. He might as well have said, I'm bored, move on. It offers me nothing. You know, he's not interested. He just made it clear, I'm not interested. His demeanor, however, completely changed, talking about Sergey Kovalev. And we had interviewed Kovalev previous to Canelo. Kovalev was kind of his usual self. And what a contrast. Kovalev was in the room basically by himself. He's wearing a purple and gold Crusher t-shirt. I guess Laker colors. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a purple t-shirt on that guy. Jeans, very low key, very happy about the fight, very positive for the most part. He had to get a few shots in at John David Jackson again. But other than that, pretty pleasant. And I asked him whether he respects Canelo. And he was very animated in saying, I do. I respect him. He works hard. He takes risks. I understand him. Attitude of a champion. I turned around and asked Canelo the same thing about Kovalev. Do you respect him? Once again, very animated, very positive. Yes, I have great respect for him. We later find out they've, seen each other backstage by themselves. Kovalev has Canelo take a selfie with him. I don't think I've ever seen that. And the bromance is on. Go figure. I mean, the two least likely guys I can imagine, who seem to be pals. And I can't help but think that they feel dissed and disrespected and badgered by all these people around them. And they understand each other. They kind of, in an odd way, find themselves rowing in the same boat, wanting the same things, and they can work together to get them, at least for now. So what an odd situation we've got. Who knows what's going to happen? I think the relationship between Golden Boy and Canelo, maybe even Canelo and DAZN, is at this point very, very rocky, very, no pun intended, on a very tentative,
on shaky ground.
Yes, exactly what I'm looking for. I think we're talking about almost a fight-to-fight basis. It's going to be hard to predict what happens after this fight. Time will tell. But right now, Canelo and Kovalev are each other's best friend. It's just kind of wacky, and we'll see what happens.
I'm going to go around the rest of the panel here to the fellas. Your response to Gail's reporting from the Kovalev Canelo presser, as well as what was said behind the scenes. I'm going to start with you first, Daniel, and then you can follow up, Bo and Jacob.
Yeah, looking at the transcripts and then looking at the pictures, looking at how the atmosphere of this press conference was, you can tell there's been a lot of damage done to the relationship between Canelo and Golden Boy in general, but more obviously emphatically Oscar, because we do remember, I think Oscar was asked about the third Golovkin fight, and he said it would be in 2020, and then Canelo said Oscar says a lot of things. So you can tell the chill in the air would come to it. Part of it could be because of that DAZN, like I said, how the deal DAZN was structured in a way where I feel like that service mainly signed it contingent upon the third fight with Golovkin. There's also the fact that we have to take into account that last week would be Canelo's weekend. Not last weekend, a couple weeks ago. It would have been his weekend, Mexican Independence Day weekend. And he wasn't there. Yeah, a lot of that has to play into a factor. Maybe a factor has to play into the fact that he, unlike what happened the first time, where he pretty much told the WBC to take a hike when they try to force him to fight Golovkin the first time. This time, the IBF, just because the IBF follows the rules for the most part, stripped the title from him because they didn't get the waiver in time. So there's a lot of factors that you could tell there's a little bit of frosty relationship going into it. The Kovalev side of it, I'm not really surprised. He's obviously going to take shots on John David Jackson, even though John David Jackson has been the man that has guided Kovalev through the most successful parts of his career. And obviously, yeah, and he did. I remember Kovalev did say when they respected Canelo, he takes risks, unlike Andre Ward. They were still bitter about the loss to Andre Ward. So you find these two people that we see with Canelo, who, like it or not, whether it's relationship or not, has pretty much taken a career path that's almost similar to Oscar's, as far as him going up and down weight divisions at this point. And then Kovalev, who in many ways was seen as an afterthought in the light heavyweight picture, even after winning the title back. It's pretty interesting to see that these guys get along, be jovial, but at the same time, you can tell there's an inner war in between, particularly on Canelo and Golden Boy. Can it be rectified? In a way, yes. Like Golden Boy, like I mentioned last week, Mike, Golden was doing their best to try to rectify the situation, throwing a lot of money at Ryan Garcia, who's now in the Canelo camp. And maybe they'll do something else. Maybe they'll get another endorsement deal, something that will placate him enough for it to show that we're trying to get this done as best as possible. The zone it's a different matter, because the zone has invested a whole lot of money into Canelo, and has invested a whole lot of money into Golovkin on their agreement that those two would meet. Now, it's similar to what the zone did in a way when they were offering big money to Deontay Wilder to fight Anthony Joshua without really consulting Matchroom or Joshua in the situation. So the zone is actually also playing the fire. That's probably the more tenuous level of relationship, but it's a relationship that you can see that they have no real choice in but staying together, because it's not like Canelo's going to run to Showtime anytime soon. Unless they fully become the saviors, Golden Boy decides to become fully the saviors of that channel once again, because given the news that came out recently today, it kind of looks like Showtime is about to go the way of HBO when it comes to boxing. So,
for those who don't know, give some detail on what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, Steven Espinosa, I think either today or yesterday, announced that Showtime was backing out of negotiations to air Deontay Wilder versus Luis Ortiz 2 on pay-per-view, which quickly pivoted to Deontay reaching a deal with Fox, so it'll be Fox pay-per-view. Now, Steve Espinosa just mainly said, we love Deontay, we love Ruiz, we know this is a good matchup, but the terms that were discussed were not really favorable to us, so we chose to walk away.
I'll go to you, Bo. Sure, Canelo, he has to stick with the deal with the zone, but that doesn't mean he necessarily has to stick with Oscar. As I said, he's a cash cow, and because he makes so much in and out of the ring, does he really need Oscar at this point? How much does he really need Golden Boy at this point? He's his own unit, single unit. He's his own entity. He is his own corporation. And I think for the foreseeable future, what Gail mentioned, disclosed behind the scene at the presser, um, that simmering tension is going to continue on.
Yeah, it's going to continue on, but here's the thing. Most of the time, and Gail said, he said trabajo when it comes to Oscar. Sometimes I don't have to like you to work with you. We see this, all the time. And all we have to do is just, hey, just for this one moment, get this, then look at the next step. Get this, look at the next step. He has an 11 fight deal with the zone. Part of that, even if he is upset about the Golovkin fight, Canelo has to understand the zone is looking at it the way of it's the biggest money making fight that we can make on our end. And at some point, even if you want to say, well, he didn't tell Oscar, or Oscar didn't tell him, but once that contract was signed, it's kind of like you kind of locked in here. De La Hoya, yeah, of course he can. Carnelo's, like you said, he's his own entity. He can get anybody, kind of like what Floyd Mayweather, did. He was by himself, but he was using Oscar's promoter's license to promote his fight, right? So the question remains is how much of being able to do that does Canelo know about the whole game, about the whole business part of doing that? So for right now, I mean, we're going to have to see how this plays off. Like you said, the situation with Ryan Garcia, and they say, oh yeah, sometimes brothers fight and family fight, but I don't air shit. So I think,
Right.
yeah, and I think when I wrote about this, I said that it's unusual to see this happening with a group in Golden Boy that's normally able to kind of, pretty good at PR damage control. So I think getting like Canelo Alvarez really wanted Kovalev. That was something that I remember Oscar saying, and that was something he was adamant about. And so they got him that fight. But what happens after Kovalev? Because once you start jumping up in weight like that, it's kind of hard for you to get back down to something feasible. And then, of course, you look at 168. You got Colin Smith. Like, it doesn't get any better for him when I look at 168. I look at 168, it doesn't get any better for him. You got, David Benavidez, you got Colin Smith. All right. So, but I mean, you got fights that he can make. So it's going to be interesting, in my honest opinion, to see what's going to happen. And, even given the situation with Showtime, that's going to be interesting to see. See, the thing is that when you look at Fox, they just have a bigger platform. They're able to do a lot more. So that's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, I personally, I look at this as everybody's looking at one thing, and that's more or less the short-term goal, because everybody wants to make these fights. They want to make a lot of money, but they're not looking at the long-term goal, which is how to continue this so it's fruitful for everlasting. So it's going to be curious. I'm really the thing that's going to interest me, because if Golden Boy loses Canelo, I can see a lot of fighters leaving with Canelo because he is that likable of a dude, and he is looked at, like you said, as the hierarchy. So this is really going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think for right now, Canelo fight, especially if he wins, I'm not going to say it brings about change, but it does kind of softens it. It's going to be what's going next moving forward, because once you become that WBO light heavyweight champion, there's going to be expectations on you, because you got Bivol, you got Beterbiev, who was in a unification with Kovacic. So there's going to be some pressure there. You're holding the belt at 168. It's going to be some pressure there. And you got all these guys from 160 to 175 that are jockeying for position because they want to fight Canelo. So it's not going to get easy. And he's going to have, if he's only worried about not having to fight Gennady Golovkin, he's going to have a lot after this Kovalev fight if he wins. So right now, all of these entities, this seem to be these little bits of problem. So it's going to be really interesting on how they figure out how to piece this thing and hold this thing together.
Before I go to you, Jacob, Got a question from Gus here in the chat. The question he asked for you, Gail, is Kathy Dewar was unable to confirm if there is or is not a rehydration clause. Can you shed any further light on that?
My understanding is it's not something that they built into the contract. So the question is whether any of the sanctioning organizations are going to enforce this. Well, we don't have an IBF rehydration clause, which is, built in by their commission. We're talking about this fight being for Kovalev's belt. So is the sanctioning organization itself going to enforce some kind of rehydration clause? And I think that's the big question. Not that the promoters have built it in, not that the fighters have built it in. So it's going to be up, in this case, to the WBO and what they decide, whether they're going to enforce it, ask for it, who knows. It's interesting whether I'd be curious to find out what you think, whether you see this favoring one or the other. I think it's very possible. I'm not sure it's the smartest thing to do. I think it's possible Canelo comes in night of the fight bigger than Sergey does. Sergey is a real lean, light heavyweight. If you saw the face-off photos, it's very obvious Kovalev towers over Canelo. And in person, it's even more pronounced looking for some reason. Kovalev's just one of those stringy muscle type guys. Michael, from your fitness background, you can certainly weigh in on this too.
He has a kind of what they call a sinewy build.
Yeah. He's like a piece of beef jerky. He's getting like that more and more every as he gets older. He's the guy that bulks up. He doesn't have a big shoulder girdle. He's got really small legs. It's interesting. Canelo, man, he could put it on. He's one of those guys that could just load on muscle. Now,
yeah, he's a wide little
he's a wide load. He really is. Yeah. That's not the smartest thing to do because muscle can really weigh you down.
Canelo comes off as he looks like he's a mesomorph.
Absolutely. And you have to move that shit around the ring. And think about in your own life putting 2 5-pound weights in your hands, or 2 10-pound weights for that matter, and walking around all day. Okay, it seems like it'd be easy. Do that for a half hour. Just do that. Then exert yourself for 5 minutes and do that. That is very draining, which is why it's not necessarily smart to rehydrate up with heavy water weight, which you can't control where it goes, and put on all that kind of muscle and have to move it around against a guy, like Kovalev, whose weight is well distributed, very evenly, he's thin, and that gives him the ability to move around a lot more quickly, which means you also punch a lot more quickly. Now, everything being even, Canelo's by far the faster guy, but not if he weighs himself down. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm not sure rehydration clause is going to be super critical, or one side or the other would have asked for it to be written into the contract versus letting the commission dictate it. And since the IBF and their rules aren't involved, and the WBC and their 7-day and 30-day weigh-in rules aren't involved, I'm thinking we're not going to see it.
I would quote Prodigy of Boxer, but I'm not going to go there. Bo know what I'm thinking. Mesomorph, for those who do not know, mesomorph is a person. This could happen with men or women, but a mesomorph is a person who can basically put on muscle easily in a short amount of time. That's what a mesomorph is. I'll go to you, Jacob. You had an answer to Gus's question in the private chat. you can expound on it here, and also talk about the kind of little tenuous relationship between Canelo Alvarez and one Oscar De La Hoya.
So again, I know Gil probably has more information than I do, but from what I understand, it was brought up. I can't remember at what conference, but it was brought up that there is no rehydration clause, or they're not trying to keep Kovalev from ballooning up. But to Gail's point, Kovalev isn't known for like getting super big. If anybody is known for gaining a bunch of weight, it's Canelo. So I think on the night of the fight, they're probably going to be closer in weight. Maybe not. Obviously, the height, there's a big height disparity there, but the weight, I don't think is going to be as great as people might think based on the statements and the kind of leading of the media saying, oh, well, a guy's moving up 2 weight classes to face the champion. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Canelo fights pretty much at light heavyweight, even when he was fighting at like 154, his Canelo weight, 155, and even these middleweight bouts. He's known to not weigh himself on the night of the fight, or at least not disclose his weight on the night of the fight, and to gain a lot of weight after the weigh-ins. As far as the situation with Canelo and Golden Boy, I don't think anybody get it twisted, but if Canelo leaves Golden Boy, in my opinion, Golden Boy is done. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago where Golden Boy disclosed their financials, and Canelo was basically the biggest part of that and the only significant part of that. So if they were to lose him, I think that could potentially be a wrap for Golden Boy, because they don't have they might be able to do some local fights and do okay in ticket sales, but it's not. I don't think it's going to keep the ship that Canelo has built afloat.
Not until there's an heir apparent, which is why they're nervously keeping their young potential stars like Ryan Garcia happy, but he's not there yet. He may never get there.
Which is why they should focus on Virgil Ortiz Jr.
That's the other guy. Virgil Ortiz it's possible that Virgil Ortiz is the guy. They're looking at Jaime Munguia. They're looking at Garcia. I mean, there are guys in the wings, but they're not coming out onto the front of the stage anytime soon. And Jacob, You're right. I don't think it was that long ago. It was during the Heyman Golden Boy lawsuit. They had to disclose their financials on the public record. And that's when everyone looked at it and went, damn, the only guy making them any real money is Canelo. So they cannot keep that business running. I mean, Bernard's going to have to get back in the ring if they lose Canelo.
He's going to have to lie about being knocked out.
Yeah, he's going to have to, hop to it. And
you mean keep the lie alive in terms of the fight against Joe Smith?
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
You have to lie about that. You have to lie about that knockout.
Otherwise, Jacob, you're right. And Golden Boy essentially becomes a version of a lot of the small regional promoters that we have that do fights in California. And, they do fine. They pay their folks. They keep people employed. But, they're doing fights in Corona and Ontario. And, maybe at some of the casinos.
Fantasy Springs.
Even there, they are not at the Forum. They are not at Madison Square Garden.
No.
So,
well, that's what they was doing. They were doing on LA Fight Clubs. But my thing is, Daniel.
Yeah, but that's 2,000 seater.
Yeah, but right. Jacob, my point was, if Canelo leaves, okay, I believe, this is just me, that he has such a pretty good thing about him where some of those fighters may leave with him.
Oh, I agree with you. I think Garcia would leave with him for sure. They're very tight. They train,
and especially since they're both being trained by who is it, Reynoso now?
Yeah, Eddie Reynoso trains them both. They're they're together all damn day when they're in the gym. So come on. The only big problem is Ryan barely speaks any Spanish. He's typical Southern California kid, So, don't let the Garcia name fool you all that much.
Yeah, he's a Mexican. He's a Mexican Backstreet Boy.
Yeah, I ain't gonna say that. I ain't gonna say that's just a Mexican thing because Danny Garcia is the same way.
Well, he's a Mino Mexican in name only, I mean,
Danny Garcia is the same way.
Danny Garcia is a light skinned black guy. Stop.
But here's what I think.
But I know more sense than that dude. Come
and
on.
I'm surprised in a way we didn't see this with Garcia. So why didn't Oscar dangle the prospect of, hey, Ryan, why don't we set you up with your own little promoter's license LLC, right? And tie them together financially. Why haven't they done that with Canelo and further entangle themselves at the business end? And, maybe it's worth it for Canelo if they make it easy for him. They take care of a lot of the messiness and paperwork and, the boring organizational obligations that go along with running a business, which any of you that do that know that some days, you're really not taking care of your craft or putting your skills out there. You're just running the show behind the scenes, and it's a pain in the ass. So
but maybe
for Canelo, bind themselves a little tighter.
But maybe Canelo doesn't want to do that because being a promoter, so like Jay-Z has discovered, being a promoter that actually makes money as far as a business manager isn't easy. There's very few promotions that do it successfully.
There are very few. However, notice how many of these guys do set up a promotional arm as their career is starting to look toward the end, because it is one of the few ways they can stay active in the fight game. So you see, Kovalev has his own promotional company, and he's trying to bring guys out of Russia because he's got ties and insight there. Golovkin's doing the same thing in Kazakhstan and some of the other nearby republics, in Uzbekistan and so forth. He's got a line on those guys. The whole Ukrainian mafia is doing the same thing. If they can pry them out of Egis Klimas's hands for one damn second. So Canelo could be doing that in Mexico. Now, the truth is, it's hardly ever there anymore, but he's still got a network. Put his family to work, for God's sakes.
But again, maybe he's not interested in staying in boxing versus just being a fighter, doing his time, and then he wants to do something else.
And he might not. And God bless him. That'd be the healthiest thing he could possibly do. But very few guys do that.
Well, I mean, he's in a unique situation though, because to your point, what Bo was saying earlier, there's not too many Canelos. I mean, again, we get a Pacquiao, a Mayweather, a Canelo. As far as popularity and money, it's almost impossible to be able to design or pick up on a fighter that's going to have the skill, the popularity, the perfect package to make the optimal amount of money. It's just a rare thing that happens. So, I think Canelo, in a way, because he's making so much money, he has obviously more money than he needs. I think you often say, Gail, how much money do these guys need? He's making so much money that he doesn't really have to do any of these other side things, because if he, at the end of his career, if he's smart and he just has all this money, he can leave boxing and go do, I don't know, go retire and just enjoy his life and enjoy his family and do the things that so many boxers before him have not done. Maybe he's learned from that, from history, where these guys fight on too long, they don't manage their money right, and then their retirement ends up being not a retirement, but coming back to the sport again and again and again, only to be disappointed.
I would like to think so. And Canelo does have interests outside boxing. for those of you who see him on Instagram or follow him from time to time, Canelo is a very serious equestrian. He's very serious about his horses. He raises horses. He's a damn good rider, truly. And if that's a sport in a very expensive hobby, he can pursue, a lot of those guys actually compete in that world, well into their 60s and 70s. You've got guys on the Olympic equestrian teams in their 60s and 70s. Who knows?
Let's move on to really talk about the big fights of the weekend. I was going to mention a story about Golovkin, but I'm gonna hold off on that because the big fight is Spence Porter happening this weekend, welterweight unification.
Who's that?
Spence Porter.
Never heard of him.
IBF WBC welterweight championship. I'm going to you to get this conversation kicked off first, Bo. Three Kings Boxing is going to be, I think, in the building the night of the fight. Going to provide wall-to-wall coverage of the bout. Your thoughts going in terms of the keys for the fight, the keys for Spence, the keys for Porter. The reason the show started late this evening was because I was part of a weekly chat, a weekly team meeting, group meeting, staff meeting, and we were talking extensively about this fight. Kind of share a little bit of what happened there in terms out here. So the keys for both guys, and who do you have winning, Bo?
This fight right here, when you look at this fight, everybody overwhelmingly just wants to go Errol Spence. People forget something about Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter has been on this level for a very long time, and he has fought at a high level. He's fought the Keith Thurmans, he's fought the Danny Garcias, he's fought the Adrian Broners, Gail's second boyfriend. He fought
Brooke. He fought Brooke.
Right. He fought Brooke. So when you look at that, Shawn Porter has definitely been on that level. So he understands and knows this moment. My only issue with him is and I say this all the time, I don't like this about fighters, when they start doing things or trying to change things up in an important time of a fight that they've never done before, it takes away from their natural ability of who they are that got them there. Shawn Porter tried to box against Ugis. I thought Ugis won that fight. Ugis should have won that fight. And I remember watching that saying, if he tries this with Errol Spence, he's going to lose because Errol is a much better boxer. He's a better counterpuncher. He judges range a lot better than Ugis does. So he's going to lose there. Shawn has to do what Shawn does. He has to be the guy that fought Usyk in the amateurs. He's got to be that bull. He's just got to get up on Errol and get physical with him because nobody's ever tried to get physical with him because of what you're going to encounter if you try. Well, he's going to just going to have to say the hell with that and get physical with him. If he goes in there and Errol is doing a good job, he's baiting him because Shawn is like, oh, you think I can't box? All right, we'll wait and see. So he's baiting him with that. Errol Spence, all really Errol's got to do, use his height, use his reach, because he's definitely the better boxer. So use his height, use his reach, use the counters. Don't let Shawn get any kind of momentum. Take what's given there. He's not a fast puncher, but he's a very accurate puncher. Errol doesn't waste a lot of energy and he pinpoints him. Shawn's gonna have to give Errol kind of like how Kell Brooks did early on, because Errol is not a very fast starter. He's a guy that he needs some rounds to figure you out. So Shawn is gonna have to try to keep him off balance. If you're going to do something new as far as footwork, but don't do something new as far as your approach to fighting the guy. So for me, this is a very interesting fight because it's one of these fights to where you look at the winner and you look at the loser and how much did sometimes when guys lose, they're like, oh, well, it's back to the bottom for this guy. wait a minute, these are the two best guys fighting each other. So how much did the loser really lose? And if it's a really good fight, we might want to see them run that back again. So I like this fight. Anybody that's saying Errol Spence walks over Shawn Porter's lost their fucking mind. I could see this fight being 115, 113. I don't think Errol Spence knocks him out. And I hope he doesn't go in there looking for that knockout. I hope, just like with just like with Mikey Garcia, when he realized Mikey Garcia was in survival mode, to just, hey, you know what, take what's being given to you. I think when I watched the Lamont Peterson fight, Errol showed different levels of his ability. Like, he showed that, hey, I can be more than just a one-dimensional fighter. So he definitely showed us that. So, I mean, I'm excited about this fight. I like this fight because I think that Shawn has the experience enough to give Errol some trouble, because Errol only experience in a big fight was against a weakened Kell Brook. And I'm not afraid. I'll say that. Yeah, it was a weakened. I would have rather have seen a Kell Brook that didn't coming off the eye issue. Okay, so that's his only experience, and Kell Brook was actually winning it until Errol came on in the second half of the fight. So I'm really excited about this, but I think that my fight that I want to see is that undercard, because David Benavidez is hell-bent on making Dirrell pay like a motherfucker. He really hell-bent on making, he want that belt. Dirrell tried not to fight him. He wanted to make a unification because he wants that belt. Then he wants to go take care of Caleb Plant. So I'm interested more so in that. I definitely think that this whole card is going to be a card worth watching, because you're going to have Benavidez, and then you're going to have a unification. Then it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen next, because at some point, Manny Pacquiao is going to have to fight one of these guys. He's going to have to fight the winner at some point. He's definitely going to have to fight him. My only thing that I don't like Errol Spence talks. I was not okay in no shape, form, or fashion how PBC is doing the WBO, period. I didn't, when the fight that was, what fight they was naming all the guys. Oh, that's when they was talking to all the 168-pound guys. And they was naming all the guys that holds belt at 168. And they named Canelo Alvarez, Callum Smith, Plant, and Benavidez. And they just acted like, Billy Joe Saunders just didn't fucking exist. I don't like how PBC is doing it. You can't, just because you don't like them, you can't ignore a whole nother entity as part of being undisputed. I don't.
They did that with Crawford too for the World.
Well, yeah, but no, and that's why I said I don't like how they're pretending that the WBO just don't exist at all. Period. I don't like that. That's bad. They need to, PBC need to fucking stop that shit and get over that and let that shit go. And I don't like how when it comes to that Crawford fight, Spence's approach to it is like, yeah, maybe I'll fight Terrence Crawford, but I got Canelo. I don't care about your other options, man. I really don't fucking care. I really don't. I'm sorry. I understand you got Canelo, and if Oscar wants you to fight Canelo and you want to get 20 million, I get it. It's a business decision. I get that, right? I want to see you fight Crawford. I'm the same way when it comes to Canelo. I'm not a big fan of him fight Kovalev. I'd rather see him fight the Boo Andrades. I'd rather have seen him fight Charlo. Hell, I'd rather see him fight Callum Smith. So I'm not a big fan of him doing that. And I just think that's what goes on in boxing. We have to stop picking, not us in particular, but some of these fans have to stop picking and choosing who to get on their neck. Get on the necks of all these dudes and make them have these fights. So at the end of the day, though, I like this fight, but I know that whoever wins this fight, they're going to be gunning for Manny Pacquiao. And I'm not sure Manny Pacquiao is going to be too excited to see either one of these dudes, after this is over.
Preach.
In terms of the undercard, you looking forward to that, Bo? Let me just go ahead and say it. I think that Benavidez, he's going to body Dirrell. Dirrell has no shot. Benavidez, he's a better fighter. First off, he's more consistent. Second and third, he's pissed off. Dirrell is about to feel the wrath, and I'll just say that right now. I ain't even going to wait on that.
He was pissed off against a guy named Ron Gavin, and Gavin gave him a little trouble. Listen, man, this is boxing. You never know. You just never know what happened. He might get in there and think Dirrell is a punk, and Dirrell catch him.
Dirrell is shaky, man.
We never thought Andy Ruiz would be a world champion. Look where he is, man.
Dirrell, he's too wishy-washy in the head for me. You can't do that against a young hungry Tiger.
He almost beat Tyson Fury. So I'm just saying, man, you gotta, you know what I'm saying? You gotta give my Midwestern brother, You know, got to give him a little bit of chance here, man.
Who's that fighter he struggled against? The guy that Chris Eubank Jr. Blasted away.
No habla inglés.
There you go. There you go. So no. I just don't see it. But we'll move on. I'll leave everybody else that. Gus, corruption in boxing. He says in terms of the earlier discussion about Kovalev, he says Kovalev's optimum weight is 183 pounds by his own admission. And to your point, Gus, Kovalev over the past year or so has done a better job of keeping his weight down. When he fought Pascal first and second fight, he had issues getting down to 175 pounds, but particularly as he's moved on to Buddy McGirt, he's done a better job of keeping his weight low. He also says that, and I'm showing it here, that he, in his mind, he feels that Errol Spence is vastly underrated. I'm going to you,
No, he said
Daniel.
overrated.
Overrated. Excuse me,
Yeah.
overrated. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on the fight, your keys for both Spence and Porter. And to Bo's point, for me, I didn't like Porter's mindset in the Ugas fight at all. I just didn't. It made no sense how he fought. It made no sense his approach. I want to see the Porter that overwhelmed Alexander and Malignaggi. That's his best shot for me, Daniel. He tries that boxing stuff against Spence. He doesn't just lose; he gets beat up. For me, for Porter, I want to see how Spence reacts if Porter is able to get low, get in his chest, and stay in his chest, punches and bunches all night long. That's one of the things that we have not seen Errol Spence react to. Your thoughts? Are you there, Daniel? I don't think he's there. So let's bring the conversation. Let's go to Jacob and Gail then.
I'm sorry. What do you want to know? What
Yeah, your keys to the fight. I don't think Daniel's there. Your keys to the fight, like as I was saying that, I want to see the pressure fighter from Porter. I want to see the fighter from Porter that's kind of a bully, that's rough and rugged. The fighter that we saw against Alexander, the fighter that we saw against that nearly decapitated Malignaggi, the fighter that we saw bully Adrian Broner. To me, that's his best chance to win.
Yeah. So I'll be there. I'll be at the fight. So I'm really excited for this fight. I like Shawn Porter. I like the guy. And to Bo's earlier point, I mean, the guy's the only welterweight right now that has fought all besides Bud Crawford, but has fought most of the top other welterweights. Besides again Bud and Pacquiao. And if he wins this fight, could be a potential fight with Pacquiao. So I got to give him a lot of respect for that. I mean, I think a lot of people thought he wouldn't fight Brooke. I think a lot of people thought he wasn't going to fight Spence, and he's been willing to go in there with with whoever they put in front of him. And I think, Shawn Porter, I think he, specifically in this fight, his demeanor in the lead up to this has been very different. I think he's out to prove something. I think he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, specifically because he is the underdog on here, and he's been an underdog before, but I think he's most people are counting him out of this fight. I agree with you. I think that his best chance to win this fight is to take Spence to a place he hasn't been before, put him in uncomfortable situations, and I think those things are going to be pressure. Just kind of going at him, not letting Spence box him from the outside. I mean, Spence, I think, is the better boxer. Porter's a little bit like more of a rough and tumble guy, but I think he needs to use those to his advantage. Lean on Spence and throw body punches. Get him on the ropes, and even if you tie him up and you're just making it where Spence can't get into a rhythm. Because you don't want to do that, and Spence is gonna I think he's going to try to box from the outside. I think he's going to try to hurt Porter to the body. And I think Porter and his team know that. So if kind of know what the guy's going to do, hopefully they've crafted a game plan where they can pull out a victory. Now, I'm not going to pick Porter to win. I'm still going to go with Spence, but nothing would make me happier that Porter pulls this out. It has been the year of the upset, so it would be kind of fitting in this year. But at the end of the day, what I would like to see is just basically a very competitive fight. I want to see both guys, leave it all in the ring. I'm not sure if there's a rematch clause to this fight, or if it's a close, or even if Porter wins, if they're if they're gonna do that. Oh, sorry. Sorry, guys.
No problem. No problem.
I'm at work, so
I'm woke now. Shit.
But anyway, here I'll take a pause. I'll let somebody else go for a second.
Gail, continue the conversation, please.
I am going to continue, and we've got 3 like-minded people. I'm absolutely with you, Bo. We need to see the bully version of Shawn Porter in this fight. He cannot outbox Spence, but he can be the pressure fighter, the likes of which Spence hasn't ever seen. And he has already given us plenty of clues in the news conferences and through his remarks that that's exactly what he's going to do. If you saw today's final news conference, it was broadcast live on Fox Sports 1 and streamed. And Spence and Porter really got into it. And one of the things Porter said was, I'm aggressive and I'm strong and guys can't handle it. There are things that happen in the ring and you just got to move with it. I'm always ready to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Now, that's the quote that was sent out via PBC's public relations team. However, if you recorded it and took a little bit more, and got a little more notes taken and paid attention, Porter and Spence interacted on that theme a little more than the quotes would lead you to believe if you hadn't actually watched it for yourself and taken some notes. And Porter said, listen, when you're in the ring with top-level opponent, it's supposed to be a close, action-packed fight. And Spence said, you're like an in-shape street fighter. That's what you are. And then called him a dirty fighter. And Porter said, more or less, whatever. Whatever it takes. But he denied being a dirty boxer. Then that's where he said, I'm aggressive. And then he said, with the background I have as an amateur fighter and as seasoned as I am as a professional, you don't get that far being a dirty fighter. And Spence said, well, that's not wrong, whatever it takes to win. And Porter said, yes, right, watch out. So I think he's telegraphed exactly what he's going to do. And I agree with his game plan. If that's what it is. He needs to lean on him, crowd him, not let him get shots off. And Bo's right. Spence is a slow starter. He likes to take his time because he, so far, has been able to take command in every fight. I'm not sure he's going to be able to do that this time. He can't give away those early rounds because it's going to be very, very difficult for Spence to stop Porter. I mean, Thurman tried like hell, didn't happen. So I don't think Spence is going to get any closer than Thurman did, and not as close, in my opinion. I do think if Porter executes exactly the right game plan, he can't make any mistakes. And if Spence takes his eyes off the ball or he tries to engage, Porter could win it, could absolutely win it. I'm also in agreement with you, Bo, that I hope it's a close fight, a fun fight to watch, so much so that we see Spence Porter too. Nothing wrong with that. And that gives PBC, some nice programming down the line, and it's all good for everybody because Spence Crawford isn't going to happen anytime soon. And who else is there for him to fight? Yeah, Pacquiao, and maybe that's the fight you get in between. So we'll see.
Let me see if Daniel's there. Are you there, Daniel? I think Daniel is MIA right now.
No, I'm here.
Go ahead.
I'm here. Oh, yeah, this is going to be a good fight. If everything lines up correctly, it's going to be a good fight between Porter and Spence because it's a pretty good styles when it comes into it. It's a guy like Spence was pretty good and it's good technically, but you can tell packs a lot of punch versus Porter, who is for the most part a street fighter in many ways. And that's how, and he has to get inside. That's how he gets the job done. And in the fights where he hasn't been able to, it's made it look very, very hard. So this is going to be a very interesting fight to me to watch. There's a possibility I could see Porter winning this on points. Because it's very similar in a way to actually how Spence Brook looked at times, where it was Brook who was able to impose his will upon Spence, but ultimately Spence's power ultimately proved too much. This could be a similar case, only in the fact that Porter could probably outlast a little bit when it comes to what Spence can offer, and could see him winning. At the same time, though, we know the fights that Shawn Porter has been through. We know the type of fighter he is. He also can leave himself pretty open to a nice little hook from Spence. And that could end things. So it's going to be a very fun fight. And I agree with Gail. Like, if this leads to a second fight, then the PBC has a pretty built franchise when it comes in a division that they've pretty much owned for the past, nearly half decade?
Maybe it's just me that I think that the only reason we'll see a rematch is if only if Porter wins. I'm going with Spence in this fight, but he's going to be in a rough go. The key for me is, interestingly enough, because of what you mentioned about Spence being a slow starter, how he deals in the early rounds, because Porter is, if he fights like I think he's going to fight, he's going to be fighting balls to the wall from jump. He's going to be in Spence's face from jump, and he's a pretty quick starter, and he throws punches in bunches. If he can get to Spence early, and particularly even maybe hurt Spence early, I think we have a chance for a really, really good fight. If Spence is able to kind of survey the scene, and somehow find a way to avoid the onrushes of Spence and establish the jab. If he's able to establish the jab against Porter, Porter's in trouble. He's in big time trouble. But I think he's going to get in his chest. But ultimately, I think Porter's going to get in Spence's chest. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, Spence is going to find a way to gain distance and box, because he is the better boxer. And we talked about how the physicality of Porter. Well, Spence is not a weakling in there. He's a pretty strong dude himself. He's a guy who can probably fight at 154 pounds right now, and he's a rough and rugged guy. I mean, you hear the stories about him in the gym. He beats guys up. He's a physical guy himself. So I think during moments of this fight, he can match the physicality of that, coupled with his ability to box, coupled with his height and reach. I think that's going to be the difference at the end of the day. I'm going 7-5, 8-4 in rounds, but I think that Errol Spence will have enough to win this fight. Let's go to the undercard of Benavidez Dirrell. Dirrell defending his WBC super middleweight title against Benavidez, former champ, who basically lost the belt because he fell in love with the Coco. I gave my thoughts on this fight, so I'm going to leave the breakdown. I'm going to give everybody else the opportunity to break this fight down and give their prediction. And anybody who wants to start the conversation, by all means, jump in.
Okay, I'll start this. This is going to be a lot more on Benavidez than it is in Dirrell. Dirrell thought he would need to fight, won the way he was supposed to win, but Benavidez obviously is bigger, younger, many ways stronger. And the onus is going to be on him because you need to come back from doing what you did. It's like getting cocaine in the system. And we know he said it before that it actually was a benefit for him because it made him a lot more focused in many ways. But at the same time, unless you win spectacularly in this fight, this is what people are going to remember you for a good while. So the onus is on Benavidez. I do expect Benavidez to win because, unfortunately, the Dirrell brothers have always been, to me, I've always said it, where if both of them were combined into one fighter, that would be one hell of a fighter. But each one of them has the one thing the other one lacks. And in this case, Anthony, we know he has tenacity, but he won't have the skill set to probably be able to completely put Benavidez away. And I do expect Bandeirado to win.
Gail, Bo, Jacob, your thoughts?
I think you've got a very well-rested, motivated, well-trained David Benavidez. He's the picture of confidence, youthful confidence. I think he's got this. I think he is doing a pretty good job of getting in Dirrell's head. Again, as I said earlier in the show on another fight, in fact, I think I said this for multiple fights, and I believe it for every fight. They're won or lost in the mind first. I think a lot of Dirrell's comments during the news conferences, during some of his interviews, are as much self-talk as anything, because he knows he's got a formidable opponent. The crowd's absolutely going to be there for Benavidez. They like him. He is a big, powerful, strong young guy, and he's gotten hungrier and hungrier and hungrier, especially after doing some really stupid things outside the ring. I think he is one of those guys that absolutely has learned from his mistakes because he saw his accomplishments taken away from him. When you have a guy that hungry, he's very dangerous. He wants that belt back. He firmly believes it was taken away and that Dirrell didn't earn it because it was a vacant belt. It's an interesting setup, and I think it all leans toward Benavidez putting some hurt on the dog.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
So you say he was in love with the cocoa. Who doesn't like chocolate? I love chocolate.
You're on fire tonight, Mr. Rivera.
I have my moments. Yeah, I don't have much more to add on this. I mean, I think Dirrell will give him a few challenging rounds, but Benavidez, he's younger. I think he's very hungry. I think he also has a chip on his shoulder in the sense that he wants his belt back. And so, Dirrell is I think durable, but he does lack, like Daniel said, it does lack some of the skill set that his brother has. So it'll probably, hopefully, it's an entertaining fight in the sense because they both kind of despise each other, or at least it seems like it. So hopefully that'll feed. It'll be kind of like fuel to the fire, and hopefully we see a good lead up to the main event. But I see Benavidez probably maybe a decision. I don't know that he'll. I think Dirrell's just enough. Jesus Christ, it's just tough enough to maybe go the 12 rounds.
Now, Bo was kind of chastising me for being a bit so presumptuous in terms of saying that Benavidez is going to have his way with Dirrell. Okay, who you picking then?
Talking about in the fight, Benavidez and Dirrell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm going with Dirrell. I mean, I'm going with Benavidez.
Okay.
No. That's a no-brainer. That's really no-brainer. I think that Dirrell also is one of those seasoned guys. He's been in moments like this. He fought at this level. So I think he will bring something to this fight. I don't want Benavidez to go in and think, hey, I'm just going to walk over this dude because the foregone conclusion I'm going to fight Cater Plant, because that's who he wants to fight. So I definitely think that it's. I think Benavidez wins this. I just think that Dirrell will have his moments. I could see Benavidez win this 8-4, 9-3, because he is the better. Benavidez is, in my honest opinion, he's the more pure fighter. Dirrell sometimes looks like he's thinking on what to do. It's not fluid with Dirrell. It's fluid with Benavidez. And the one bad performance by David Benavidez was when he fought, that Gavin, and he himself even admitted that that's why he immediately wanted that rematch, and we saw him look much, much better. So that right there, I like that. I like that rematch. I mean, I like this fight. I just think that I don't want David Benavidez to be so upset and so angry about how he lost title that he goes in there and he doesn't do what's easy for him to do, and he makes it hard for himself because he's looking to try to prove something. But outside of that, man, yeah, I definitely got David Benavidez in this
fight. Just gonna go around here because we're gonna start shutting the show down shortly. Excuse me. There are other fights that's on tap this weekend. I'm gonna give each and one of you or anybody here an opportunity to talk about them. I know Dubois, the heavyweight, he's going to fight this weekend. Nicola Adams is fighting on the undercard of Spence Porter and Dirrell Benavidez. Mario Barrios, Jose Cito Lopez, the Ghost. Why is he still fighting? I don't know. Young up and coming middleweight Joey Spencer fighting on that card. So going to give everybody a final opportunity to talk about any other fights they want to mention right quick.
I think Lopez versus Molina could be a fun little fight. Kind of a little appetizer before the co-main and the main event. So not too interested in the Ghost fight. Because I agree he should have stayed retired. But was it Mario Barrios? I'm interested in that fight. And then the other two, Dubois and the other fight that you mentioned, hopefully those are good.
You know what? I want to say something. We did see a Gary Russell. We saw a Gary Russell in the ring. We saw two of them. Isn't it amazing that his brothers actually fight more than him?
Wow. Yeah, you're right.
Well,
Man, you're
that
right.
one I'm not surprised. That one I'm not surprised by. But oh yeah, that Molina Lopez fight. Yeah, that can be a very very entertaining fight into it. And it's between two guys that have gone as far as they're gonna go in the sport, and whose probably most signature moments have been in unexpected ways. Like we talk about Lopez, we know the the highlight of his career is making Victor Ortiz quit on the stool with a broken jaw.
In Staples, at Staples too.
Yep, at Staples Center, and we know with Molina, you can say it was either between that insane ninth, 10th round comeback against Mickey Bay when it was a wash on the scorecards, or even that fight with Matisse, where he had to be beaten down like a dog in order to lose. So it's a very interesting fight to look at, and it's not really going to factor much into as far as what the picture is in the respective weight classes. But at the end of the day, a lot of times some of the best fights don't really need to have title pictures involved.
One quick word. According to Dan Rayfield, quote unquote breaking news, even though Three Kings Boxing, Bo, mentioned this story a month ago, but breaking news from Dan Rayfield over ESPN. Um, Richard Coleman, Teofimo Stevens, Teofimo Lopez. The fight is set December 14th. Your reaction to that, folks?
I like that fight. I think this is another. Listen, I like anytime, and you get a lot of people that say, "Oh, he's being cocky, he's moving too fast." If a fighter thinks he's ready, you put him in there. I wish Floyd Mayweather would adapt this thought process. But if a fighter feels he's ready, you put him in there. I like to see young guys, want to come in and make their mark. That's what the sport is all about. That's how all these guys that we're talking about now, was able to do what they did. And the lack of that type of gusto, that lack of that type of bravado is the reason why you have guys like Manny Pacquiao and other fighters who are, past it, still able to fight and be competitive. So I like it. He's going to fight Richard Coleman. He wants the title. He's shown that, is he good enough? We're going to find out. But to take that next step, we're going to find out, because Richard Coleman is no pushover. He's another guy that has been through his sort of gauntlet. He had to fight the Robert Easters. He had to fight the Shaka Kals. So, now that he's there, he's not just going to just give it up because you're Teofimo Lopez. Lopez could probably find himself in a fight with a guy that's not going to be impressed by the fact that you're Teofimo Lopez, because, I'm Richard Coleman. I'm a champion. So I like that fight. I'm glad that it is happening. And then the only thing I don't like is I didn't like hearing Bob Arum saying that Lomachenko versus Devin Haney is not a good fight. A better fight would be Lomachenko versus Stevenson.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I want to see all. I'm sick of guys looking up or looking down. Fight these motherfuckers in your division, especially if they're quality guys. And that's my only thing. If they're quality guys and they are dudes that I can look at and say, you know what, he's better than me seeing you fighting him. I want to see that happen. I'm not, people are saying, well, Tank going up in weight, and if he goes up, he better fight Vasyl Lomachenko. Yeah, okay, fine. I still would rather have seen him fight Tevin Farmer. Why? Because that was some shit that's been brewing. And, I saw Tevin improve greatly, and I would like to have seen that fight. So I'm just, I'm okay with it. And I just would like to see these guys fight each other, because I would love to see Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney. These are two young dudes that came up together. And that's really what boxing has been about. When I was watching, it was young bulls fought each other when they was in their prime. Listen, I talk a lot of crap about Sugar Ray, Aaron Pryor, gay dancing with the stars, faggot punk.
Here we go.
I talk a lot about him.
Hey, watch those slurs. Oh my God.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Which one? Which one was a bad slur?
Take your pick.
Oh, I thought I was picking fruit, but okay.
Yeah, come on, Bo. Like, we can't get Mike demonetized now.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh,
But I will say this
look,
though.
he knows the deal. He knows whatever he want to say about Leonard. That his boy Hagler
And
was
that's
saying.
and wait a minute, and that's my point. Is at least Sugar Ray fought the top dudes whenever he went to the division that was out there, and I respect him for that. And that's what the sport has always been about to me. Is you know for some reason now these guys are chasing, they're chasing names. Kovalov is a name, and it's a name that you look at and say, oh man, look, he beat Kovalov. But I would be more impressed if Carnelo was to have beat Andrade. Same thing with Tank. Okay, yeah, you fight Vasily Lomachenko. I would have been more impressed if you'd fought Tevin Farmer, because this is the dude that I'm looking at. Like, man, he's on your neck, man. So. But yeah, I like this. I like Teofimo Lopez's attitude, and I don't see this being an easy fight for him because Richard Comey is a guy that's been through the gauntlet, and he's going to bring it.
Fight is going to happen, officially announced Wednesday tonight. As a matter of fact, the night of the recording of this show. Fight is going to happen December 14th at Madison Square Garden. I'm anticipating I'm guessing, excuse me, that's going to be the Little Garden. I'm going to be televised on ESPN. Gail, Daniel, quick word on that, please.
I love it. I love rewarding ambition. Bo's exactly right. Lopez wants the fight. He got the fight. This is another step toward potentially unifying the division. Of course, Bob Arum would love to see the winner of this fight Lomachenko. That's a big, big fight. And, to the victor go the spoils. I hope whoever wins that fight in December gets a nice fat paycheck, goes for that unification. And if it's Lopez, it absolutely will happen. And I'm sure Comey will too. There's no downside for either of them if they win, taking on the king of the division, and we get a true unification fight. There are not enough of those in boxing. There is nothing not to like about this.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, everybody expected this fight to happen pretty much as soon as Comey won the belt. And it's kind of telling the way that the road, like Bo mentioned, like the road that Comey had to take it to this fight to get the title. This guy fighting Robert Easter in a fight that many people thought you won, but ultimately was ruled not in your favor. Fighting Shavkov in a fight that a lot of people thought you won, but it didn't come out in your favor. And then, luckily, now you finally won the title in the West Star performance, and you get thrown with one of the best prospects that the divisions has. Like we mentioned, it between him and Devin Haney, it's going to be an interesting dynamic into it, and it'll be a fun fight. Like we mentioned, it will be a fun fight to me because Teofimo has a lot to prove. This is going to be in New York, and obviously, and he's going to have a hometown crowd. And ultimately, what's going to shape up probably is the hype real when it comes to Teofimo Lopez. If the hype is real, then the fight with Lomachenko will be some more watering. If Comey wins, then you almost have a fighter that you could feel like is already somewhat, like you mentioned, somewhat tailor-made for Lomachenko in a way as far as his fighting style. But we have mentioned it, and lightweight seems to be the plateau division for Lomachenko. And fighting somebody like a Richard Comey might be a little bit too much for Lomachenko. Not so much as that he rocked on the feet, it's just that his usual bag of tricks may not work anymore.
You love opportunities like this. A young up and coming fighter blows a potential. And when talking about Teofimo Lopez against a Comey who, after losing an opportunity, a title opportunity in the past, an opportunity that a lot of people thought he won, he finally gets a world title. on paper, exciting fight. Both guys can punch. Both guys are vulnerable. Um, Looks to be an exciting fight and a great way to end 2019. High profile fight between two high profile fighters. You got to love it. And I think we're going to end the show on that note. I want to thank Gus from Corruption in Boxing. I want to thank Olaf for joining us in the live YouTube chat. I want to thank them for their commentary, for their comments, and their questions as well. Jacob had to dip out because, as you heard, he's doing this. He was doing tonight's show at the job. So if you want to talk boxing, or if you want to talk movies with Jacob, you can check him out on Twitter, JRATM23. Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing. He's also a semi-regular of the Wrong Reel movie podcast. Excellent podcast discussing movies, current, present, and movies of the past as well. I'm going to go around the panel here. We start the show with ladies first. Going to end the show starting with ladies. End the show with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News, for those who want to talk the sweet science. For those who want to talk all things media, because you do teach media. Let the folks know where they can find you.
You can find me in my regular column at Communities Digital News, which is COMM Digi, D-I-G-I News, comdiginews.com. If you're at the fight at the Staples Center this weekend, I will be there. I will be in the media section. Come look me up and say hello.
And absolutely, Gail's going to be there covering for the Communities Digital News. She's going to be in press row, and Jacob, he's going to be in the audience, watching the fight with the folks. Going to Daniel from the Inscriber, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Ruckus99. Most like tomorrow, I'm going to be able to restart the show with Joe and Francis. And when it comes to our show covering the week, we have taken a long hiatus. Been very, very busy. I did busy season in both of our jobs, but definitely want to enjoy talking again. And obviously, we're going to talk more when it comes to the Heat, NBA in general. Hope to link up with Bo on that, because we know he not only does Three Kings, he does Truth and Facts about sports in general. So hopefully we'll catch him on that soon.
Yeah, and last but certainly not least, Bo of Three Kings Boxing and Truth and Facts about Sports. We got to get this college football thing kicked off. Got to find a way to do that, Bo.
Mm-hmm.
For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk sports in general, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Hey, first, man, I want to say it's always good being here. I love doing this. I love talking to you guys, man. It's always a pleasure, but of course, the smartest and prettiest person on here is me. So that's what makes everybody, oldest. That's what makes everybody legit. Wait a minute, I'm the old. Am I really the oldest person on here?
We'll have to talk about that privately offline.
Okay, wait a minute. I'll say this: I am 2 door knocks away from 50.
Oh, hell, man.
All right. So, yeah.
I got you beat there, brother.
Oh. You talking about you don't look like a day past 18.
If you aren't officially AARP age yet, are you getting that shit in the mail yet, man? Come on.
No. Well, hey,
they start sending it to you when you're 40 if they know where to find it. Damn.
Yeah, I've already told my kids, if they see something like that, throw it away. Don't even bring it in the house. You'll be on punishment for life if I see that.
Oh, so you're in denial. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, you can find me Truth and Facts Sports Talk. Also, Mike and my man Daniel, I'm gonna be going. I've been watching some of this football, and I've been seeing some crazy stuff going on in football. Oh my goodness, some of these calls and some of these plays and blown leads. Don't even get me started. So, but yeah, and of course, Jacob, Gus, for Gus in the chat, Jacob for joining us, man. This is, you guys want knowledge, you guys want, different views of opinion. You guys want respectable boxing talk. People disagree. Nobody talks over anybody. We all get along, and this is the place you guys want to be, right here.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. As I said at the beginning of the show, for those who want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. That is the link. Check the top right portion of the blog page. You'll find links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us all over platforms that carry RSS feeds, you know, your Spotify's, your Google Play Music, your Google Podcasts, your SoundClouds, um, that kind of thing. Links to the where you can find the donation links. Let donation be the best nation. Also links to the my online fitness coaching page. I'm over at Beachbody again. Wink, wink, nod, nod, Gail. I'm going to restart the Let's Build Together group fitness challenge. In October. So I'm going to get that kicked off. I didn't do it this past month because I went on vacation, took some time off. But we're going to get things started, get things rolling again back in October, at the beginning of October. On the next episode, we will do a breakdown of Spence and Porter and the cards and the fights on that undercard, excuse me. And we will do a preview of Gennady Golovkin, who's going to fight Sergey Derevyanchenko for the vacant IBF middleweight title. Pretty intriguing women's bout. Going to happen on Showtime the same night as Derevyanchenko and Triple G. Clarissa Shields, she's won a title at super middleweight. She's won a title at middleweight. She's moving down to junior middleweight for her next fight, attempting to become a three-time, three-division champion, and she's going to be fighting Habazin for the vacant belt at 154 pounds. On the undercard of that Shields bout is a fighter I'm very intrigued by. Jerron Boots Ennis doesn't get talked about much in terms of top prospects, in my opinion. Doesn't get talked about enough, I should say. Undefeated welterweight on a 13-fight knockout streak. It's going to be fighting a fighter by the name of Fernandez. We talked about Ortiz Jr. on the Golden Boy statement, how he's a future champion. I think Boots Ennis, he has a chance to be a world champion as well. So we will do a preview of all of those fights. So I want to thank Jacob, who joined us earlier on the show. I want to thank Gail. I want to thank Daniel. I want to thank Bo. I want to thank Gus and Olaf in the YouTube chat. This has been episode 267 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. We will see you all. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.